You know, something's really different about the Raiders these days. For the first time in years, they're actually sitting at the big boys table in the NFL. There's a lot to break down here. So stick with me. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. Now, let's dive into what's really interesting. We're going deep on GM and head coach candidates for the Raiders. Coming up, we'll look at John Spytek, Tampa Bay's assistant GM, a guy who knows Tom Brady really well. We'll also break down Ben Johnson, who's looking like the frontrunner for head coach. But first, the big picture, what we're seeing with the Raiders feels different. Look, we've all been through the cycles of hope before with this team, but something's changed. With Tom Brady involved, a proper search firm handling the coach hunt, and Mark Davis finally having real capital to work with, not just franchise value, but actual cash. It's a whole new ballgame. This isn't the same old Raiders where Davis was labeled as the broke billionaire. He's got legitimate resources now, thanks to selling those minority shares to Brady and others. It's putting them on a more equal footing with the NFL's power players. The playing field's leveling out, and Brady is helping navigate these waters. You know what's interesting here? While we've all seen these cycles of excitement before with the Raiders' leadership searches that didn't pan out, this time really does feel different. They're not sitting at the kids' table anymore, if you know what I mean. Let's break down these GM candidates they're looking at. We've got John Eric Sullivan, the Packers' vice president of player personnel. That news came from Rob DeMasi at ESPN. Then there's John Spytek, Bucks' assistant general manager. We'll dig deeper into him later. Sheldon White, Steelers' pro personnel director, is in the mix too. Then on Wednesday, they added two more names. Chad Alexander, Chargers' assistant GM. Interesting background with the Ravens there. And Brandon Brown from the Giants, who's been getting a lot of attention in these GM searches. There's also buzz about possibly adding Lance Newmark to the list. He's the Commander's assistant general manager with 26 years of Lions experience. That Lions connection is particularly interesting because of Ben Johnson. Now let's look at this coaching search. They've got quite a lineup of interviews. Robert Saleh, former Jets head coach, and that impressive run as 49ers defense coordinator he's in today. Pete Carroll interviewed Monday, Vance Joseph's coming up. They've talked to Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson from Detroit, and Steve Spagnuolo from Kansas City. There's also interest in Todd Monken from Baltimore, though that's still developing. And here's something crucial. This hiring committee is interesting. Shout out to Sherrod from The Athletic for breaking this down. You've got Mark Davis as owner, Tom Brady as minority owner, Egon Durbin from Silver Lake as CEO, and Michael Meldman from Discoveryland. So the hiring committees are stacked with heavy hitters. You've got Wagner from Knighthead Capital, and Richard Seymour's in there too as a minority owner giving his input. But here's what's really interesting. All signs are pointing to Ben Johnson as the frontrunner. Let me share what Ian Rappaport dropped on NFL Network Wednesday night. He said other candidates and agents around the league are seeing Johnson as the leading candidate for the Raiders job. But here's the thing, and this is crucial, nothing's locked in yet. They still need to meet all the hiring requirements, and Johnson can't officially sign until Detroit's season wraps up. Speaking of Detroit, they could make a deep playoff run. We might be talking Super Bowl on February 9th here. That's a long wait, and a lot can change. Johnson could have a change of heart, especially if the Lions make a special run. Now, let me share what Lions' insiders shared about Johnson's readiness as a head coach. He said Johnson's more than ready. We're talking about a guy who's transformed Detroit's offense. He's got this incredible bag of tricks, pre-snap motion that confuses defenses, creative formations with 6 offensive linemen, tackle-eligible plays with Penei Sewell. They can run it, they can throw it. They're versatile. What's really interesting is how selective Johnson's been. Last year, Carolina was after him. Remember, he's a North Carolina grad, but he wasn't interested in working under David Tepper. This time around, word is he might come to the Raiders with both coaching and front office ideas. There's talk about potentially bringing in Lance Newmark from the Commanders or Ray Agnew, Lions assistant GM, guys he's worked with before. The big question is how he'd build his own team. Here's what's intriguing. Johnson's likely looking for significant input in personnel decisions. He wants to know who he's working with in the front office. That's why Chicago might not be as attractive. Too many questions about who's really in charge. You know what's really interesting about this Raiders situation? Hey, if Johnson comes in, they're talking about giving him real power. And Matt Derry made a great point about what Johnson's learned from Dan Campbell in Detroit. It's all about building those lines first. Look at what Detroit's done. Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow just made All-Pro, Decker's solid, and that defense line with Aiden Hutchinson is no joke. If Johnson comes to Vegas, you've got to think his first priority would be building around Max Crosby. His offense is fascinating too. Just look at what he's done with that run game in Detroit. He's not just working with stars either. Sure, he's got Gibbs now, but remember what he did with Jamal Williams before that? Even got production out of Craig Reynolds when they needed it. Now, here's something to watch. Lance Newmark. He hasn't been officially requested for a GM interview yet, but there's a lot of buzz about him being Johnson's preferred partner. 26 years with Detroit, now assistant GM with the Commanders. That's the kind of experience you want. But here's the catch. Every GM candidate they're looking at would be a first-timer. Remember, that's exactly why Champ Kelly didn't get the job when they went with Antonio Pierce. It'll be interesting to see if Mark Davis changes his stance on that. Speaking of connections, let's talk about John Spytek. This guy's got history with Brady. They were teammates at Michigan, and they won a Super Bowl together in Tampa. He actually interviewed with the Raiders back in 2022, and now with Brady in the mix. What's really impressive about Spytek is his track record in Tampa. Over the last 3 years, they've been one of the best drafting teams in the league. He's Jason Licht, and he's proven he's ready for the big chair. He's already interviewed with the Raiders in 2022, the Vikings, and got to the second round with the Steelers. What stands out about Spytek is how complete he is as an executive. He's got that media presence. Licht's actually been grooming him for it, letting him handle some of the draft press conferences. That's important for a GM role. Looking at his background, he replaced John Robinson, who went on to run the Titans, so there's a strong pedigree there. Here's what's really interesting about their philosophy in Tampa. They have this concept called I am that man. It's about finding highly competitive people with strong character and football IQ. They'll actually take a B-level athlete who checks all those boxes over an A-level talent with character concern. Look at Tampa's locker room. You don't hear about off-field issues, and that's by design. The Brady connection here is crucial. Spytek was key in bringing Brady to Tampa, and not just because of their Michigan ties. They built that Super Bowl caliber offensive line Brady wanted and had weapons like Evans and Godwin ready to go. Even after Brady left, look what they did. Transitioned to Baker Mayfield and stayed competitive. That's the kind of roster management that could really appeal to the Raiders. Looking at Spytek's philosophy in Tampa Bay, what really stands out is their draft strategy. One of their best moves was jumping up just one spot to grab Tristan Wirfs, the guy who just made first-team All-Pro at left tackle after already making it at right tackle. That's NFL history right there, the only player to make All-Pro at both spots. Here's what's key about Spytek's approach. He's a build-through-the-draft guy. In today's salary cap world, you can't afford to miss on expensive free agents. But look at Tampa's free agency moves last year. They mainly focused on keeping their own guys. Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David. These weren't flashy outside signings, but it's smart business. You're keeping guys who already fit your culture and system. This could be huge for the Raiders if they land him. Spytek's blueprint is clear. Be strategic with free agents, but focus on building through the draft. We're talking about finding 4 starters per draft class, which Tampa's done consistently. So whether it's pairing him with Ben Johnson, Pete Carroll, Robert Saleh, Vance Joseph, or Spagnuolo, Spytek brings that proven track record of sustainable team building. This kind of methodical, culture-focused approach could be exactly what the Raiders need to turn things around. All right, guys, that's the deep dive on what's cooking in Vegas. What do you all think? Is Ben Johnson really the game changer this team needs? Or should they be looking at someone else? And speaking of Spytek, his build-through-the-draft philosophy could be exactly what the Raiders need. But here's a real question for you. With all these first-time GM candidates, should Mark Davis stick to his guns about wanting experience? Or is it time to take a chance on fresh blood? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Are you excited about these potential changes, or have you been burned too many times before? Let me know what you think about Brady's influence on these decisions too. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with all the AFC West news and Raiders insights. This offseason's shaping up to be a wild ride.